everyone. Welcome back to the Capsule in Conversation. I'm Natalie Anderson, and for the next half an hour, I'll be your host alongside the Capsule's fashion editor, Anna Muse, and our travel industry expert, Lyndsey Thomas. And today, we're joined in the studio by psychologist and coach, Jivan Dempsey. So take some time out, make yourself comfortable, and get ready to join in with our conversation. I hope you're all well. Thank you for joining us on this very cold January day. Thankfully, though, we've got our lovely Capsule ladies bringing some warmth into the studio today. We've got our gorgeous fashion editor, Anna Muse. Hello, Anna.
Hello.
And we've got our girl about and travel industry expert, the fabulous Lyndsey Thomas. Hello, Lyndsey.
Hello. How are you all?
Good, thank you. And joining us for this week's episode, we have psychologist and life coach, Jivan Dempsey. Hello, Jivan. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure, Natalie. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So we last saw you back in September where you shared the stage with our lovely Lyndsey at the Beauty and Wellness event, and you gave us some amazing insight into so many things that cause us anxiety, which was hugely beneficial for all of our audience, I think.
Oh, I'm glad you felt so. Yeah, it was very good. It was lovely being with you all, actually.
Oh, I was going to say, did you enjoy it?
I did, very much so. It was a real opportunity to really kind of like showcase and talk about things that I'm really passionate about, you know, and anything that we can do to try and alleviate anxiety and stress in our lives, you know, more than happy to be talking about it and to almost shine a light on it as a big, massive problem.
Well, you've given expert advice to Cosmopolitan, to the Daily Mail, to Woman and Home, and obviously us here at the Capsule. And, you know, you're very much like us. You're about empowering people. So just tell us a little bit more about the kind of work that you do.
So I mainly work with clients who are experiencing low self-confidence and low self-esteem. That comes from a very deep place, and actually it then manifests itself in terms of the way we feel about ourselves and our place in life and in work. So I'm really keen on working with people so that they can really achieve the very best that they can. And empowerment is all about making people see the real potential in themselves, and they only do that as they start looking and getting more confidence and really feeling their worth in their lives and in the world.
Well, Jivan, I'm interested to talk about imposter syndrome today. As a woman who has suffered, and only really last year did I really start to understand what imposter syndrome meant, but apparently I have had severe imposter syndrome. Where the heck does it stem from?
So it goes back to my last answer. It really does stem from self-confidence issues. I've got to say, imposter syndrome very much affects high achieving women.
Well, that's me.
Perfectly. Because we're always questioning ourselves. We do that naturally. 70% of us will always experience some form of anxiety and some form of imposter syndrome, but we get over it. However, there are some people who experience it so very deeply, and it just goes round and round in their heads that somehow they're not good enough, somehow that they're going to be found out that they're not good enough. So you're constantly putting on an act, you're working that much harder and faster because you need to be better than everybody else. And it stems from the fact that you feel that you're never going to be good enough. And unfortunately, very, very high performing women are always suffering with it. And it just means that it's a hamster wheel of activity that goes round and round and round.
Is that something that you think stems from childhood, do you think?
It can do, because it's the kind of the conversations that we may have experienced and the narrative we may have experienced when we were children, you know.
I agree, yeah.
Good enough.
I had quite a tempestuous relationship with my father, in particular my evil stepmother, we'll call her. Hopefully she's not listening. But anyway, that really affected me. And it was only really last year when I came to realise the impact that she had. And I was given this really great tool by another coach who was helping me. And she made me draw what this imposter syndrome would look like in the way of a person. And now I have my evil stepmother I would never have ever have thought that I would have had her pinned to my office wall. She sits there above my desk, and whenever I'm feeling like I'm not good enough, I can't do it, and I look at her and I imagine drop kicking her across the room, and it sorts me out.
But
every
we
time.
don't advocate violence in here, obviously.
But don't you think so many women do like suffer from it? And I don't know where mine's come from, and didn't really know that I would get. I mean, I don't have severe imposter syndrome. It doesn't cripple me. But I remember the first time I think I experienced it, I used to work in a corporate environment in the marketing department, and I had to present something to the board, a concept that I'd come up with and worked on. And I remember presenting it to them and them all like asking for my opinions on things. And I sat there thinking, oh my goodness, they're actually like listening to what I'm saying, and they're going to make decisions in the business based on what I say. But I don't think they should be listening. Like all of that self-doubt crept in, and it's really hard to contain it sometimes. So what kind of, I mean, obviously it'll be different for everyone, but do you have any sort of tools or tips? Because I think so many of us suffer from it to some degree.
The key to it is to accept praise, because we don't do that.
We don't, do we?
we kind of, so for example, I have a very similar situation myself. You know, when I do presentations, I never feel that they're going to be good enough, or no one's necessarily going to believe anything that I say. And it's because you don't want to hear those words, oh, that was a really good job. You don't want to hear it.
It's hard to believe, isn't it? I don't know why we find it so hard to take.
And is that just a British thing or a female thing? Or
I would say it's a female thing, but I think you're right. You're probably also hitting on something that actually it could also be a cultural thing, because would you put this particular syndrome over in the States or somewhere where they have big
Can you imagine
confidence?
Trump, really? Oh no, please no.
But then he's not a female.
Well, that's true.
I think as well, like my mum and I have this conversation a lot, because I am one of those people that struggles to kind of accept any form of, oh, you did well, oh well, I'll pick absolutely everything. I will find completely holes in everything that I've done, everything that I've achieved, and go, well, it wasn't quite, and play everything down. And I don't know where that does come from. I wonder sometimes if my mum says it's because at school, if you were doing well, you were kind of had the mickey taken out of you, and you didn't want to be different, and you never wanted to be the one that kind of was doing well, which I was always doing well at school, but I always played it down because I wanted to fit in with everybody else.
That's like people pleasing as well,
and that's absolutely, I'm one of them.
Like
I'm 110% a people pleaser as well.
You don't want to be the teacher's pet, because it's the teacher's pet that's always the one that gets
picked on.
And that's me.
In the playground.
I was as well.
Were you?
Yeah, totally.
Definitely me, and I can see that.
Well, actually, one of the things I wanted to ask you about was perfectionism, because I think imposter syndrome and the need for perfection, they sometimes for me go hand in hand, and I've always been a perfectionist in every area of my life. The girls will tell you I'm always early apart from today.
Apart from today.
Me and Lyndsey are terrible getting in.
Oh yeah.
But like in every area of my life, I have this self-imposed, I've got to be on time, my house has to be tidy, I like my hair to look like some things that seem really superficial, but when things aren't perfect, which let's face it is 99% of the time, it stresses me out. And how do you get a harness on something that for me has been innate since I was teeny tiny?
Perfectionism, in my view, equals stagnation. Because we're so focused on just making sure that everything is absolutely just spot on, we don't move forward.
Totally.
And it does stem
Oh, I love
from,
that. That's a great thing to channel.
That's why we're doing all right, Lyndsey, because we're not perfect.
And I'm just like,
But it does stem way back in terms of fears that we have, because we're not willing to let go. So we're over here glossing up this little thing and making sure this is all perfect, because then we don't have to focus on the real thing, which is over here, that we need to work on.
Which is almost like the white elephant in the room.
Exactly. And regrettably, things like perfectionism kind of leads into obsessive behaviours and compulsion. And there are so many different syndromes that you can kind of see, and I work with my clients on quite regularly, and it's all to do with the fact that their perfectionism comes from something much deeper within them, which is actually rooted in fear and goes all the way back to that narrative that we used to hear as children. We're not good enough, or no, you can't do that, or no, we can't do that. We're just not good enough. And those messages just kind of become part of your DNA.
That makes me panic now as to like, not that I go around telling my Freddie that he's not good enough or anything, but you know when you just suddenly, you're a parent and you're like, stop doing that. Why couldn't you have done that properly? Or do this. I'm listening to myself thinking, oh my God, what am I doing to my child now? Because, you know, your mums and dads or whatever, they probably do in a rush or in a panic or whatever, just criticize you sometimes without even realizing.
Or just from wanting the best.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, for them to reach their potential. I suppose it's delicate.
Yeah, but I mean, there are parental boundaries that we have to set our children anyway. I mean, obviously there are some disciplines that we need our children to follow and to recognise that society isn't a free-for-all. But it's just the tone. So don't beat yourself up about it, because even the best parents will, by default, say things that their children are going to remember, and they're going to think, oh, that was a bit harsh. But it is the constant repetition of it that slowly starts to make children feel that actually, no, they're not good enough. And it's they start to absorb those messages. So don't feel that, you know, you're not a good parent, because actually you probably are. So don't even think that.
I'm looking at you now like this, trying to go through every single thing, going, oh my God.
Listen, if I can get my kids to school in the morning, then I've done well. You know, if they get fed in the morning, then
bonus.
I'm ahead of the game.
You're ahead.
Yeah.
Something as well that I'm quite concerned about, and which is another reason I really wanted to chat to you, particularly at this time of year, is because, you know, tomorrow will be Blue Monday, and this is a really important day for a lot of people. It's the day when, you know, a lot of bills will be piling up for people, people instigate divorce, and you know, even tragically, there's the suicide rates as well. What, for anyone out there now going through, you know, anxiety or depression or just worries, what would be your advice to them at the minute?
The first thing is to recognise that there is help out there. And that's always the first step that people need to take. And quite often people don't make that first step. They don't take it because they're, again, wanting to hold back, or they don't recognise the realities of what they're facing. Christmas is always a difficult time because the spotlight is on families, it's on joy, it's on everyone having fun, it's on buying the biggest and the best presents. And sometimes it becomes very superficial, and that focus, that spotlight can be enormously pressurized for some people. If people are out there and they do feel that, you know, that the pressure around Christmas is so much, then actually reach out and start asking for help, because that is the first step. And there are some simple things that the professionals can actually help. Even if you don't want to go to a professional, just reach out and speak to a family member or a trusted friend, because once you recognize the gravity of the situation, you're actually already on the road to making a change and to improving.
Yeah.
When I started writing my blog 4 years ago, was really the first time I really touched on my mental health, and it's had such a major impact and such a sort of, you know, cathartic impact on me as a person. And also I've helped lots of other people, and I get lots of, you know, great people contacting me saying, you know, thank you. But as soon as you start even just talking about it, the difference it makes to you is incredible.
Self-awareness is absolutely the first
and then
step.
you can start to sort of not make a joke of it, because that's the wrong thing to say, but you can then start to look
be
at
more
it
frank about
in a
it,
slightly less serious light, and and I don't want to, you know, I don't want that to sound like I'm, you know, sort of
minimising it.
Trivialising it.
Yeah, I agree with you in that sense. I spoke about this on another podcast actually not long ago, about the minute you kind of detach yourself almost from it and you get it out in the open, and then you can be a bit more frank about it and less emotional, it suddenly just becomes a sentence than something that's, you know, if I say, oh, I've got anxiety, that's a sentence and a fact, not the crippling feeling of I'm going to cry when I tell you this because it's the first time I've ever said it. And that's something that I've definitely learned, is the more we actually are able to talk about it, then the more frank and easy it becomes to just say, okay, I'm feeling a bit like this today, rather than attaching all that weight to it. And that seems so difficult, doesn't it, at the beginning?
Because people fear that they're going to be judged in some way, or somehow they're not as good as somebody else. And I'm so glad that the narrative is beginning to change now in society, that actually it's perfectly okay and it's quite normal to have these sort of feelings and to reach out and get help. Once upon a time, we would have, you know, looked down on people that kind of had mental health issues, and that has been wrong on so many different levels. And I'm so glad we're beginning to see a change now, that having a conversation where you're actually asking for help is the norm, and I so want to see more of that.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy and pleased that you've been able to give me this platform to help share that message, and you're talking to other people about it as well. And I think we should talk more about it so we normalise the conversation around mental health.
What do most people come to you to speak to you about? What are their concerns when they come to you?
It can be a multitude of things. I mean, I work with people who have had experienced trauma in their lives. So
Right.
I work with people who have, they've had something quite serious happen to them. And as a consequence of that, they've kind of sort of absorbed it. They're not talking about it. And at long last, they kind of feel that I need to be able to move forward. I need to let go of the emotion around the event, whether it's things like abuse or PTSD or whatever. It's learning to let go of the emotion that's holding you back around that event, and having the courage really to take a step forward, because it's only when you start dealing with things, the emotion that's kind of almost got a grip around your ankle, and it's holding you in that in its kind of it's locking you in. That you can actually start to enjoy life again and actually feel that you can move forward and take your rightful place. So I talk to people who have kind of experienced something big, but that's not to say that people who are experiencing self-confidence or self-esteem issues, even if they don't necessarily have a trauma, that there is still the techniques and the way that I work with them is still very, very relevant. So I work with mainly people who will come to me because they've had something with regards to their self-confidence issues. And then when we start talking and we start delving into where that's coming from, there's a whole host of stuff that starts to come
Isn't
up.
it interesting as well how once you become conscious of this and you take that first step towards helping yourself, we'll call it, that has a major knock-on effect. I know from my own personal experience, when I started sort of dealing with some of these, these skeletons in my closet and various other aspects, that I started to sort of progress down this path of not feeling like I had to be perfect all of a sudden, whether it be how much I weighed, what I looked like, all of that sort of fitted into place all of a sudden. It's almost like I don't need to be what society deems as perfect. I am me, and as long as I am the best version of me, then that is what is important.
Absolutely.
Nicola said that, didn't she? Nicola Elliott, when
Yes.
she came in from Neom.
She was enlightening.
She was, incredible. And she'd said, we asked her, how do you do it all? And she went, you just drop a few balls. And I was like, oh my God. And she said, be more sloth, like be a little bit, operate at 70%, and actually you'll get more done. If you try and operate all the time at over 100%, you'll just burn yourself out and you won't. And that's the same, like you said, in terms of being perfect and everything being amazing. If you stop aiming for that and aim just that little bit lower, you probably feel a little bit more happy
In
and
control.
and satisfied.
Yeah.
No one can be perfect 100% of the time, and we just have to accept that.
We just have to focus on being imperfectly perfect. Perfectly imperfect.
Perfectly
whatever it is.
imperfect.
I've got a great example here. So I've been kind of like doing a couple of videos, etc. And when I put them out on my Facebook or on my LinkedIn, the ones where I'm looking really polished, no one really wants to see. And yet I put a bloopers video out and I have had the most views on that one. And it's because we're
It's
just being
real.
It's
ourselves.
relatable.
Exactly,
People can
exactly.
relate, can't they? They
Yeah.
don't necessarily want to see, certainly at our age, so perfectly polished and pristine person,
Absolutely.
when you're looking like crap,
Yeah,
full of cold with a cold sore on your lip like this.
Well, we know it's not true as well. So you don't.
It's not real life,
Yeah,
is it?
it's not authentic, is it? But your job must be, I'm sure you have mechanisms so you don't get completely emotionally invested in all of your clients, but it still must be incredibly demanding. How do you cope with stress in your own life?
I have to do things like running. I have to go to the gym. I have to do yoga. I have to do meditation because some of the things that I hear can be quite harrowing. And of course, you are always having to take a step back. And sometimes you really want to reach out and actually empathize, but that then diminishes the role that I play, which is to be very much a therapist, very much a psychologist to help people find a way forward and through the emotion that they're experiencing. So I've always got to maintain that level of professionalism because because otherwise what will happen is that the individual will then see me as someone that's going to help them through the problems. It's not going to be me, it's going to be them themselves. And what I do is to help them look at different avenues and ask the relevant questions of themselves that will help them find the solution for themselves. So when I listen and I hear some of the stories, I have to go out and I have to do a run to work
just
it
to
through.
kind of get through that yourself.
And a lot of professionals in my line of work do exactly the same sort of thing.
Do you feel the need to ever go and speak to anybody yourself just to...
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Otherwise we wouldn't be.
Where you need to be. Yeah,
absolutely. Every single therapist has their own therapist.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
If only I could have mine on tap, but I can't. But we have to. We will always be triggered by some of the things that our clients are saying to us because we're obviously human at the end of the day as well, and we have to also go and seek help. One, because it means that we can then be the best psychologist, therapist out there for our clients, but also it's a way of kind of offloading because quite often I get triggered with some of the stories and then they can be but where I get the greatest pleasure is as I see my clients progressing and as I see their journey, and I know that they're the ones who have done it, but I've played a little part in helping them achieve their peace of mind and their peace with what happened in the past. And that is so amazing. And I'm always so grateful that they've allowed me into their life and they've shared with me these things that have been so painful and so hurtful for them and allowed me to help them see a better way forward for them.
If someone was coming to see you, let's just say, there might be somebody at home who is feeling desperate or they want to reach out, they want to speak to you. What would happen? They'll make the phone call, they'll schedule an appointment with you. What can they expect from you?
So what I tend to do is spend a good hour and a half to 2 hours really understanding what made them pick up the telephone. What is the issue that they really want to work with? Usually what I find is that the issue that they're actually coming to talk to me about is rarely the issue that they need work on. It's helping them to peel back the layers of the issue so that we can really find out what is it that's really deep down that the client really wants to have help with. But that is a slow journey because a lot of people they're coming because, say for example, that they're just not performing well at work or that they're not, their relationship isn't working particularly well. Once you start to have the conversation and people start to open up, actually you find so much more is buried really, really deep, and that is the root of the problem that they're coming to talk about. So we end up going into a completely different area. So it takes about 2 hours to really get to that stage where, and actually it could even be longer because my clients have to trust me. They have to, we have to have a rapport. They have to feel that I'm the one that is going to help them find what they're looking for. And sometimes we click and sometimes we don't, and that's perfectly okay. I mean, there are many therapists out there, many psychologists out there, and you have to find the one that you feel that you trust the most and the one that is really going to help you to really be able to dig deep and find what it is, and then to help you chart together with them a course forward that's going to be of benefit to them. And that can take anything from, depending on the issue, it can take just a few sessions of maybe 4 to 8, but sometimes with the really deeper issues it can take a lot longer.
And is there specific techniques that you'll use within those sessions? Because we've heard about, CBT or hypnotherapy, and because CBT for me, people say it, but I never really know exactly what it entails. Is that something that you have an idea of, that you practice?
I do. So I use CBT with a lot of my clients because CBT is very sort of action focused. So as we work together, it's putting some of the things that we're doing actually into practice, into action, so that as you're working together, so initially it's going to be about really challenging the negative narrative that a lot of my clients already have. So, they always beat themselves up. They have that inner critical voice that's telling them that they're not good enough. So it's working on ways. I know. Absolutely. It's always that monkey's always on your back. And it's a case of telling that monkey to go away and to get off your back. But there are ways and means of doing that. And you do that by really challenging yourself. And I use Byron Katie's work, which is a really simple 4 questions that you ask, which is, so if you've got a client in front of you and they're kind of saying things like, oh, I'm just never very good at that, you're challenging that thinking, you're challenging that narrative to say, really? Is that true? Is that really true? Where would you be without that thought? And what would you rather be doing without that thought? And it's really challenging it. And just those 4 very simple questions, which sort of form the bedrock of CBT, allows you to reprogram your thinking. And then as you're moving forward, you can actually start to put some real actions into life, and then when we meet again, then I'm looking to see how that's worked for you, and were they the right actions? Do we need to rethink a different approach? And so CBT gives you a framework. I also work with I use clinical hypnosis as one of my key techniques, because that actually worked really deep into the subconscious, and again helps to anchor you and helps to allow you to change your behavior and overcome fears based around certain words and images that really work for you. So you see some accelerated improvements in a very short space of time.
I read in a book the other week, one of these self-help books, that if you tell yourself over and over again, I can, but change that with I will or I am, that has a tremendous effect on your ability to...
It must be that reprogramming.
Just telling yourself that you're doing it rather than you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
it's major.
It's telling yourself, it's having that positive dialogue with yourself, it's telling the monkey to get off your back, and it's actually giving yourself a break. Those key words are so important. And alongside that, if you do some visualization work as well, so if you imagine yourself being the person that you really want to be, if you connect with that picture that you've got in your mind, what are the colors that you're seeing with that picture? What are the sounds that you're hearing? What are the emotions that are connecting with you when you visualize yourself as the way you want to be? And if you hold on to that and you give yourself some positive affirmations around that picture as well, such as, you're looking hot tonight, honey, or whatever it is, that really anchors that, and you do that for at least 5 to 10 minutes a day, then you are more likely to associate with that image. And that really does help change the way you see yourself, and just to break. You have to think about breaking the cycle of that negative dialogue that you have.
It's so true, that it's beyond truthful, because I've done that for years and years and years. One of my best friends, Marisa, always goes, you manifest things because you visualize it.
I was just about to ask about manifestation, because that's something else that's big at the moment, isn't it?
For me personally, even going back to having an idea of something. So let's just say, I don't know, going back in my career, there were things that I knew I wanted, and I would visualize it, as you're saying, and I would imagine what those people around me would react as when I got the job, and I'd imagine what it felt like, and I'd imagine things so powerfully that I think, this is just off my own head, I think subconsciously then you make decisions to get that goal. But it's kind of almost by accident, but you've programmed it so much that if somebody came to you and said, well, actually, can you do this weekend? In the back of your mind, you already know you can't, because you've already programmed yourself that you're going to be over there somewhere. And it's a weird one, but
it's incredibly powerful.
It is
Natalie.
powerful when you visualise things,
Yeah.
I think.
I did read about somebody being able to manifest a car parking space in Tesco's in a week, and I did think, what an absolute
That's a bit
load
much.
of
That'd be a bit much,
P-O-double-L-O-C-K-S, please,
Something else though, what is your stance on medication? So like giving out medication for mental health issues.
Oh, that's a really controversial question.
I know, I'm sorry. But I just, because obviously lots of people get given medication, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. But just from your point of view as a specialist, then how do you view it?
Okay. I don't actually have a particular opinion on it. I must admit, to you, because in the right circumstances, for people who are really, really, in a really bad way, the medication can actually help to kickstart a way forward. But you shouldn't just medicate just on its own. Medication alongside talking therapies is the most effective way. But you know that you need to come off that medication very, very, very quickly. It's there just to kickstart, but it's not there as a crutch, because talking therapies is a way of self-empowerment. Otherwise, it's the medication that's giving you the strength. And actually, you're not necessarily moving forward at all, because that's why people kind of... When I suffered really badly with postnatal depression when I had my first child, and I had the doctors were trying to give me, some antidepressants, and I really was fearful of it. I was fearful because at the time people were always talking about the addictive properties of it, and actually, medication does get a bad rap. But if it's given in isolation and you don't get the other support mechanisms, that's when medication can actually become...
But it is given in isolation a lot of the time. That is a problem,
Yeah,
isn't it?
exactly.
Somebody with personal experience. I'm on antidepressants, and they just get dished out to me. I have to actually go in and have an asthma test every single year. I am told you must have an asthma test before you can get a new inhaler. But yet they will happily dish me out 50 milligrams of sertraline every single day without even asking any questions. And it's not good, is it? Really?
No, it isn't. And I will always advocate that if you're going to take medication, it has to be in conjunction with someone else, with some talking therapies, but it should only be short, sharp treatment. It should never be long term. And unfortunately, it does seem to be the way we're going a little bit.
I find it so worrying that, oh gosh, there's so much more to talk about.
Just scrape the surface, Jivan.
We've really got to round things up, which is just such a shame, because we all know there's so much more to cover on this area. So, you'll definitely have to come back for another episode, I think, 110%.
Oh, name the day.
Really, well, thank you so much for joining us today, Jivan. I mean, you've been absolutely brilliant, and it's been really interesting and hopefully very helpful as well for a lot of people. We hope you guys listening in or watching have enjoyed spending time with us today. And if you are feeling down or anxious, please know that you're not alone. We've got a number of contacts for professionals and organisations at our website that you can contact if you want to speak to somebody. We also have Jivan's practice details on there too if you'd like to speak more with her and get some advice. Don't forget, you can visit all of our content at the website www.thecapsule.co.uk, and you can subscribe to all of our podcasts channels and leave your rates and reviews. As always, we love hearing from you. Also, we are now counting down the weeks until our very first fashion and body event in Leeds on February the 8th. I'll be joined by Anna and a whole host of other names for a night of shopping, styling and thought-provoking conversations. Tickets are currently on sale at our website www.thecapsule.co.uk/events. So please book if you'd like to come along, as we would love to see you there. We'll be back next week with another special guest for more The Capsule in Conversation. We really hope you all manage to have a great week. And so it's goodbye from Anna.
Goodbye.
Goodbye from Lyndsey.
Goodbye.
Goodbye from Jivan.
Goodbye.
And goodbye from me.